Last week I talked about how I spent a long time thinking about the photo and kind of planning it out the night before or the afternoon before. Not really planning in the traditional sense, but just I had something in mind from the day before. So then I went back the following morning and I put some thought into it. This photo is kind of the opposite of that. I didn't really think about this at all. In fact, I took this photo as I was just walking back to my office, having just shot last week's photo. So this was super spontaneous, nothing really planned about it. But there's some common elements too. Number one, the background is really important here. In the last one, from last week, the background was this. I called it the sea of red, and it was the early morning light shining through this red tree. Here you have the early morning light, but sort of in a different sense. Those two balls of light on the right and the left are not actually sunlight. What you're looking at here in the background is the OSU Student Union. This is looking, I believe it's looking east. And so you don't see the sun here at all. But what you see is that because it was early in the morning, the lamps lining the sidewalks were still turned on. And so the light that you're seeing in the background against the red, well, the red is bricks and not leaves, and the light is artificial. It's from the lamps. But it wouldn't happen if this weren't at that time of day. So there's really just like a small window of time where you would be able to get this particular shot, because then they'd turn the lamps off and then the lighting would kind of change anyway as the sun went overhead. But also the cedar leaf here that you're looking at, the subject, has this glow to it, and that's because it's backlit by the morning sun. So you're actually looking, or I'm taking this looking into the sun, but you don't really see the sun. You just see the effects of the sun, the backlighting, making the edges of everything kind of sparkle. But what I did a little differently from a lot of photos I take like this is normally I give myself some leeway when it comes to depth of field. I don't normally shoot wide open when I'm shooting close up because you run the risk of ruining things. You really got to be careful with that depth of field because it's so shallow that you have very little room for error. And generally it's a better idea it's a good idea to shoot close down a little bit. So I shot this as wide as my lens would go. Now it's an f2.8 lens, but if you get really close to something, it can't quite focus and maintain f2.8. So this is f3.2, which was as wide as my lens would go at this particular distance. You'd get a lot better results in several ways if you just shot this at like f8. But then you wouldn't get those big balls of bokeh in the background. You also wouldn't get the purple fringing. If you go to Flickr and you see the high resolution version, which I encourage you to do, you'll see that if you get up close on this, if you just look at the full version, it's pretty bad. The purple, they call it chromatic aberration, but basically these high contrast areas of light and dark are kind of marred by this purple fringing because of how the light is bent inside the lens. Nevertheless, I'm really happy with the super thin depth of field that I got because I shot this wide open. It was a fun photo to take. The subject was so thin that I wasn't too worried about depth of field. I just wanted to try it, and I did, and it was fun. So another example of what you can get when you pay attention to the light and look for opportunities to shoot in the early morning hours.